painstakingly wrote that using stack panels, wrappers, and a really careful vector. I think it looks better. I don't have to comment on it. It's too chunky. I'm just going to put it out there. But then again,
when you say there's a commons one, do you know what it's talking about?
yeah, the UI one that's really obvious and sat there, and when you bring it out, you think, oh, okay, that was a waste. Yes, I think that's in the Silverlight toolkit. Is it that it comes in? Yeah, if you haven't already got that, the Silverlight toolkit, any developer, you should be looking at it. It's completely free, open source, and Jeff Wilcox put it out there, and it's. I've called him the Gandalf of Windows Phone development before in our podcasts, and I fully believe it. So yeah, go and give that a shot. The podcast player, anyone who's using a podcast now should be using the Mango APIs for the background tasks. I'm not going to drum that one in, but if you're using the old vanilla style controls, listen to music, users will hate you forever, because the second you press the back button, everything disappears. They were tough days. And again, we've got things that imitate whatever theme settings that you've created. One of the strangely difficult things to do is if you're using your own images or icons like that WP Center on the top there, it didn't quite hit me is how difficult it would actually be that I have to go and set those things to be black, because they're already white. And it just seems one of the stupid things that everything else you can set to be binding. End up writing a very quick thing to check what version of background they have. And you can actually, if you look around on blogs, you'll find a very simple is light theme setting that you can use. I'm not going to drill on this one, but as you can see, hopefully everything's very fluid, very quick, and it gets great responses. We are still one of the top news apps in the Windows Phone marketplace globally. We are in every single marketplace as well. And we're on about 50,000 downloads at the moment, so it's definitely up there. And it's better than my day job the other day. I really enjoy it. This is the controversial screen that I'm going to come on to now, and I'm actually going to have a bit of a talk about this. A lot of people complain about not using the 3 dots menu, and I understand that, but when I came up with this original idea, it was, we want to have the main screen as being what you're used to seeing. It's reading an article is kind of like reading the start screen, it's glantable information. And the gesture that everyone's used to doing is swiping right to reveal the full apps list. So from my point of view, let's swipe right and we'll look at the next options you can do, and we'll structure it like it's your app list. A lot of people complained about it at first and said, oh, why is it not the ... But it's now being copied by quite a lot of other blogs and apps around, so I feel like I've done something relatively right there. And again, it's about creating your own unique design principles. If you stick with just following Metro about absolutely everything, that's not enough either. So you've got to stick to Metro for the important things and come up with something exciting for yourself. What did I learn from this one? Learn to write in XML. As I said, if you carry on with expression blend, nothing goes well. The first time I tried to turn the app sideways, it was a world of hate. Absolutely nothing looked like it was supposed to the first time I tried to do it, and that was back in version 0.3 or something. So you've got to learn to be able to write these things in the XML yourself, and you have to learn to use everything relative. Don't specify too much with anything that's not a margin, because it will come back to hurt you. And I've actually tried to start to port things to Windows 8, and that's even more true. If everything's relative, not relevant. It just comes out really nicely, and everything actually works on Windows 8. You're thinking, oh, it kind of works. If you've written it saying, oh, it's got to be exactly this number of pixels from the right, we also, of course, know that Windows Phone 8 is going to have different resolutions, so you need to be very much aware of that as well. Graphic designers, go and pay one, because it's the best thing you can do. I'm not a graphic designer. All of those icons are courtesy of Rich, who thankfully did it for free initially because it was for the site. Sorry, Rich, I did pay you eventually, so you can't complain too much. It's really, really worth it. Even make your beer. I have a designer friend who did the background for that. It just gives you something to stand out. Same with the live tile. There are 2 completely different camps, one of which says that all live tiles should look the same and have a transparent background and look like it's for Windows Phone. And others say, I want a multicolored tile home screen. I'm not entirely sure which I prefer yet, but if you have a good looking tile, it distinguishes you again from the rest of the marketplace. Defining custom UI objects if you're going to do it. Static resources is the simplest way. You can put it in the app.xaml, and don't be too scared of using that thing, because it's a really great way of making sure that your UI elements are reusable. I could quite easily license out this code to another site, and you could just plug in the same schema and it would all load up. That's just because everything's custom and relatively reusable. And Windows Phone 7 users really, really love Metro. Don't disobey them, because they will destroy you. It's terrifying. I had one guy carefully measure out the pixels in my margins and tell me that I was exactly 1 pixel off what it should have been. I won't tell you how I responded to him, but it was very polite, honest. And this is my other belief. People really hated the animations that we did to start with. But in my mind, one of the things that makes Windows Phone 7 so great is that it's a static list that you see, but when you touch it, when you swipe through everything, it's alive. Things just work. And I think it's really important, especially if you're writing your own custom UI elements, because they don't by default have an interaction element. You need to let the user know that they've done something on your app, otherwise they'll perceive it as being slow. So just by having that little option of you tap on the navigation, on our main screen, and things just swipe out. Some people hate it, that's fine. But what it does tell them is that they've done something and the app is now loading, and it just lets them know that even though there's a little bit of work to do to enrich the content in the background, something's happening. Everything, I really don't think there's anything in the UI that doesn't do something when you tap it. Even if it fades, even if it flips, even if it just swipes and moves out of the way, it's got to be alive. And part of what gets us the good reviews is people say, oh, it feels really slick, it feels really smooth. There's actually a lot of work going on in the background, but that's hidden by just a couple of seconds of animation. But I've been slowly making them shorter and shorter because people really don't like it when they drag on. And people will pay for a quality experience. And I'm not going to divulge how many paid downloads we have, but they will pay. 79p is a good mark because anything above that, people start thinking you're greedy. And they won't touch it usually without a trial. We found that even from Windows Phone Central. There's a game that recently came out, what was it? The one that just came out, it was Grow, was it? The little fish one? Didn't have a trial, and the developer basically contacted us straight away to say, oh, sorry, I missed it. No one downloaded the app pretty much until the trial came in because they don't want to pay up front and then find it's going to crash, which for the record, Grow did the first time I installed it. So you will shoot yourself so much in the foot if you do not put a trial in there for a paid app. Don't do it limited number of starts because that doesn't work. People can uninstall the app, reinstall the app, and they've got past your workaround. Make some parts of the code unnavigable. So in my case, we've put in ads as a result of seeing the trial on there. We've put in, there's a couple of features like the podcast player, some of the video sections and the wallpaper sections that are premium. Nothing that detracts from the usual experience. Nothing in the app that's paid for is something that you can get for free on the website, and that was what we tried to stick to. And feedback is absolutely crucial. Everything that went into the app since version 1, with the exception of maybe 4 or 5 ideas, has come from our end users. They either let us know via the email, they let us know in the comments, they let us know in the reviews, they give us a 1-star review and say it's not 5 stars until you have forum support. There's a lot of work there, alright? There's a lot of work to get forum support in. But people will still leave you 1-star reviews, you have to get over that, despite the fact that it feels like they're insulting you as a personal human being.
They are.
Essentially, that's the problem. I think my favourite one is somebody who complained that there's no option to disable the background task, so it drains my battery. It's a really obvious switch that says enable background tasks and it's off to begin with. I tried to find that user. It turns out trying to find people by their gamer tag on Xbox Live is really difficult. There's no give and take. Snarky anonymous bit. So here's some of the things that I wish someone had shown me sooner. And I'm not going to go crazy with code examples here because you're all probably better developers than I am. I've just been at this long enough to know a couple of little things that might help. Threading, for those of you who are new, absolutely essential. Do not put everything on the UI thread. Your app will crawl. Even so much, the first version of Rate Your Beer, that when you're trying to load the beer list on the right-hand side, even with 100 beers or something in it, it just throws the application out. It's a really bad idea to do anything. But you need to do some things on the UI, otherwise Windows Phone will throw an invalid cross-thread exception at you. So deployment parent dispatcher is how you do that. Just whack that in the thread anytime that you know something needs to work on the UI. Oh, didn't do that. The other one you probably can't see was shown to me recently, and it was thanks to something that Pepper Guy said at the last you can use that one little line there, basic comment scroller as a list box, and get its first child, and that gives you the actual scroll viewer inside the list box. If you haven't already tried that, it's a really good way of being able to either sense when something's getting towards the end of a list so you can load more content. It's also a good way of seeing exactly how big it is in terms of pixels if you need to resize it in some way. And the one at the bottom was shown to me this week, and I'm going to just champion it out there. Who uses a list box in their application here? Just a standard list box. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so enough of you. Do you have stuttering scrolling?
Oh, yeah.
In some way? That fixes it. That's all you have to do. Whack that in your on manipulation completed event. Just do a this.focus, and it completely fixes all scrolling. Well, the scrolling is absolutely buttery smooth, and version 2.3 of our app, which is due to be released hopefully early next week, you'll see it. Everything now has this every list box in there has that little bit of workaround, and the scrolling is perfect. The original person told me to do it on the focus event. Don't do that because then you can't tap on anything in the list box. So you need to do it on manipulation completed. If you've already found it, I'm getting the feeling from you guys that you're nodding, you probably have already found that workaround. Then great, but I hadn't, and that was a revelation.
Do you want to know why it works?
Do I not know why it works?
Why does it work?
So my assumption is that the list box, as it was originally written, has a little bit of Silverlight overhang, and it was designed around being able to select one item, so it tries to keep one item on the screen so that you can easily select it. And as you're going down, if your list box, if your UI element is, I think, bigger than a certain amount of the list box, it tries to sort of snap it as it's scrolling. If you do that, it stops trying to do it because it's focused on the page in the background, so that it can let the list box animation carry on without actually doing any work on it. I can't tell you anything past that, but it works.
So my understanding was it was to do with virtualization, but it could be that when it's got trying to maintain a selected item while it's virtualizing, which would stop that.
Which absolutely makes sense. The only thing I can tell you is that I've been testing it. I tested it solidly for about 24 hours, and every single bit of scrolling in the app is now perfect. So, considering that anyone who reads The Verge will know that Windows Phone got slammed for having poor scrolling in third-party developer apps, get around it. It's the simplest bit of code you can possibly write, and it works beautifully. So that is my top tip. The other thing I wish someone had shown me sooner was the design and animation sections of Expression Blend. They are really far too hidden, considering it just lets you put up a slideshow and do some animation. So if you haven't already found that in Expression Blend, click over to animation mode. You can record exactly what animation you want to do, and then start learning to write it in XAML, which is hideous for the record, but at least it works. So, now I'm going to talk to you about my little open source project that I've started. Logging and feedback, I spoke to you last slide and said it was really important, not only to capture feedback and suggestions from people, but also every single time your app crashes, someone gets a little bit more tipped off with it. So I've written a little open source project, and again, this is going to be like it's competing with you. I don't want to compete, but I do want to say that I don't believe mine has the threads issue. In fact, I very specifically designed it not to. It's a simple logging tool. It is one class, and it's basically got all the feedback hopefully you need initially built in. I currently have myself and the only other main developer is 43 Degrees. He's a German developer who does FeedMe, if you're familiar with that reader. He's writing some server-side code to be able to accept the log files as they are created in the app rather than turn them into emails, which is what we currently do. It's multi-level. You've got warn critical info, debug, the usual that you'd expect. And it's completely open source. It's at that address at the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. You guys are all developers. It would mean the world if everyone came on, just followed it, and decided maybe I want to try and add something and give it a little try. Because I'm relatively proud of what it does, even though it's the simplest thing I've done ever. I've tried to write the cleanest code in my life. I'm going to show you how it works, because it's really, really simple. So we start off with declare the logger. I've just done it nice and simple, keep it as a static object in your app.xml. That logger, you then specify what kind of level you want to use. So log level is a little enum which I wrote for this logger. You can specify error debug info, and basically anything under that level, which you'd expect doesn't get logged. You can change that later date if you want to. You can then chuck that in your unhandled exception, and that is it now. You are logging everything that you need to log. Every time anything crashes, the logger will take care of whether or not it needs to keep it in the background thread or it needs to run it on the main thread. So all critical exceptions it logs before it lets the application exit. It doesn't prompt them straight away because I found that more often than not those things get terminated. What it does instead is stores it in a log in the background. Next time they launch the app, it'll say, sorry, last time we had a problem. Do you want to send us an email? And I'll show you that in a second. But ultimately, all we're doing is logging the exception object as at the critical level. The next thing you've got is you can use it obviously in a try and catch block. All you've got to do is do an app.logger.log the exception, and that'll log it at the error level by default. You can choose to go a bit more crazy and these are the options. There is info level, and you can send it a string or anything you want. The app.logger.log object logs something at debug level. That replaces debug.writeLine. App.logger.log, so the record by logger is just something I call it. You can call it whatever you like. Log something at info, and there's also a comment. I'm going to try and use my pointer pen here. I'll do that. And you can basically put in a little comment. The idea of that is that way, if you want to know